When we last left our band of intrepid adventurers, they had boarded Zacharias' own vessel in search of a group of hobgoblin brigands that have been attacking nearby caravans. Though parts of the trip were rather tense, especially the part where the party discovered the crew were members of the Cult of the Dragon, the tension was broken rather quickly by a monster attack. A group of harpies had happened upon their vessel as it traveled the skies, and the best available fended them off with skill, leaving them only slightly shaken from the near falls a few of them had been threatened with. Now we rejoin their group as they continue their journey to confront those who would assail grain wagons from Goldenfields and put the health and safety of the people of the North in jeopardy.
So, when you finally do arrive at your destination, you find that your friend was correct. Several overturned carts and destroyed barrels of goods still lay in the area, and there is a small grave site where just over a dozen graves have been laid. The ship sets down, lets you off on the road, and then Biggs and Wedge bid you farewell, letting you know that if you head to Goldenfields within the next few days, they should probably still be there and can take you back to Waterdeep. Otherwise, you can head back to Waterdeep yourselves by way of putting one foot in front of the other. Fortunately for you, the hobgoblins do not appear to have made any efforts to cover their tracks. Although, had you arrived perhaps a week or more from now, it might have been more difficult to follow, as many things would have grown back. But the marks from large chests and barrels having been dragged or rolled through the underbrush, this tends to leave a trail. And in following this trail, you arrive at a cave.
Velotta's just gonna lean down, pick up a rock, and she is gonna cast light on it, kind of like a makeshift little fort.
Tobias, seeing Velotta do the trick of putting light on a rock, will turn to her and poke his fingers together. Begging your pardon, but could you possibly do that trick so that I might have a stone with light as well?
Velotta just kind of looked at him and just handed him the stone with a very bright smile.
Thank you.
I do believe we should be very wary of traps, particularly at the entrance area.
So, Angie, as you are heading over in this direction, the light from your lantern plays strangely along the rocks at the sudden end of this tunnel. And as you approach and get within 15 feet of it, you can tell that that is not stone at all. Seems to be a fibrous or paper-like substance that has been pressed into something to create a false wall. You can actually pick out the seam in the center where one could slide it aside.
Okay, then.
It would fool a casual onlooker, but not someone who was looking for anything with any kind of interest.
Can we try to open it, like, carefully as to not to make sound?
You're totally capable of doing that.
Okay.
Just do know that when you open it, most definitely your light will spill through. So if the area beyond is dark, it will not be.
I'll go through first.
Very, very good idea. I'll put out the lantern temporarily then.
As you slide the makeshift paper mache to the side, you are able to peer into the room, and you see that it is definitely a worked room, and it is also definitely occupied. 3 hobgoblins sit around a table, one of them with his head on the table, and the other 2 pushing a set of small rolling bones back and forth between them. So, another thing that you notice is right on the other side of this little papier-mâché wall, there is an area of false papier-mâché floor that is covering up some kind of simple pit trap. So if you were to open the door and step through, you would immediately plummet into it.
That would not be optimal. I knew there was a trap, I just knew it.
Velotta's gonna whisper to Nathaniel, "Hey, how intelligent are hobgoblins?"
I'll roll what wisdom check on that?
Let's go ahead and make that nature.
Oh,
Dumb.
quite dumb.
They are definitely of average human intelligence, which is to say, dumb. Unfortunately, they are
very skilled martially, and they are very militaristic. So they make up for their lack of intelligence and wisdom with drilled combat tactics. Many demi-human and humanoid militaries will actually seek out hobgoblin trainers to instruct their foot soldiers.
Well, Balata had an idea after she was told how intelligent they are.
Mhm.
She's basically going to explain to the party that she can create illusions of herself. She might be able to fool them by creating an illusion on top of one of the traps, and maybe having the illusion speak, haha, your stupid trap doesn't even work, and then run away, which might, fool them into thinking that it doesn't work.
Huh. Not a bad idea.
Tobias will just kind of raise his paw and say,
I too can create illusions. Perhaps I could join the effort?
Balata smiles.
Tobias casts the illusion of himself.
Yeah, it is himself, and he's doing like a jig, and just to make sure that they're good and angry at him, he's gonna turn around and shake his bunny buns at the hobgoblins.
And then Velatha makes a beautiful show of chattering about how the trap was such a complete and utter failure, and whoever set it up must have really been dumb, because anybody in their right mind could see this was never going to fall.
And Tobias will jump up and down in time with or the illusion will jump up and down in time with this assertion, just to prove the point.
So, before initiative actually happens, this hobgoblin is going to rush forward and attempt to take a swipe with his great club at that bunny butt, which is going to end in him crashing completely through the floor and plummeting down 10 feet with the sound of a metallic shunk coming from the pit.
Oof.
If it had a voice, if his illusion had a voice, he'd be using it to say, "I say, maybe you should lay off the meat haunches."
The other two, seeing the fate of their companion, are going to pick up their bows and fire at the illusion, which causes 2 arrows to plow through the papier-mâché screen. One of them shooting right past Tobias, but none of them hitting the real Tobias.
Tobias leaps in the air.
Bethaniel, who was quite honestly surprised that a childish prank proved to be a viable combat tactic, now steps forward, knowing the remaining 2 hobgoblins wouldn't be far from discovering them behind the papier-mâché wall. Bringing his holy symbol to his chest, he utters a curse and extends his hand, a fugue washing over the pair of remaining goblinoids. The spell takes root immediately, and a light shimmer settles over them like dark dew on grass. Worries and doubts spread in their minds as the bane takes hold. Angela, for her part, hurls a hand axe at one of them, but it merely glances off of his chainmail, and with that, their position is truly exposed. Tobias, having had his fun with illusionary magics, places both arms together, his paws joined at the wrists, and with a noise that sounds almost like a hiccup, the young wizard expels 3 plumes of flame. One after another, they leave scorched holes in the nearly destroyed papier-mâché, and after 2 violent, searing impacts, the final burst punches through the goblin's molten chain, cauterizing his heart and leaving him twitching and smoldering on the stone floor. A rare death to witness, though for a combat-prone race like hobgoblins, you could call it more medium rare. The bunny is pleased with his performance and cackles with glee. Velatha finds herself ill-equipped for ranged combat, and hastily snatches Bethaniel's crossbow in the hopes of contributing to their fight, though her inexperience sees the bolt flying wide, and she offers a simple sheepish expression in apology. The remaining hobgoblin is having a pretty bad day, all things considered, although the fact that his gambling debts that he had racked up during Knucklebones now have been erased, along with the life of his gambling buddy, gives a little bit of a silver lining. What he did learn from that game, though, was when to quit when he was ahead. He turns to the door and darts through it, slamming it behind him as he rushes deeper into the lair. With their quarry retreating, the party hesitates, but soon gathers the nerve to leap the pitfall and take their place in the room.
He kind of looks at the gap, and then he looks up at Velatha and gives her a little furry pawed salute before leaping across the gap with a cry of "Tally-ho!"
Oh, best of luck, little guy. Oh, nice.
Thankfully
Thank you,
for
Rabbit.
Tobias, Tally Ho does not turn into Tally Oh No, and he lands safely on the other side of the pit.
Well, I'll move up against the door. How carefully crafted is that door? Are there any gaps between the planks of wood? Like tiny gaps even. It's something, the width of a sword blade.
So there are cracks in the door. They're not quite the width of a sword blade because they are solid wooden doors. However, if you were to slam your sword forward with enough force, it's possible that you might be able to break through enough of the wood that you could plunge your sword out the other side.
Willing to bet that the hobgoblin hadn't gone far, Angela only hovers by the entrance for a moment before taking Imiter's tooth in both hands. She rushes forward, lining it up with a slight gap in the paneling, and plunges it in with all her might. The metal blade screeches against the wood, and then against metal as the blade finds its home in a hobgoblin's chest, eliciting a screech of pain from the beastman as well. She wastes no time in retrieving her blade, not wanting to be caught without it, and wrenches it free, spattering her quarry's blood across the floor, her shoes, and her companions.
Oh, damn.
Good job.
That definitely seems like it was a grievous wound.
When he hears Angela's attack and witnesses what he can of it, he just kind of wrinkles his nose and recoils. Oh.
Gosh. I'm sorry.
I love it.
I'm small, so I'm just going to go under Bethaniel's legs and try to peek through the hole that Angela made in the door.
You can see the hole that Angela made in the door and the hole that Angela made in the hobgoblin.
Okay, well, let's poke my little rabbit finger there and fire off a magic missile.
There is a resounding series of explosions from the other side of the door, and a strangled cry, and a heavy thud.
After a short dumbstruck moment from seeing such a blow, all falls quiet, and a tepid tension begins to fill the room. Not wanting a taste of her own medicine, Angela sidesteps the door and presses her back against the wall, readying her blade. The collected casters step back as well, giving themselves some range with which to cast properly. The creaking of wood can be heard, a few beats pass, and it's clear that both parties are engaging in a standoff, neither side wishing to open the entrance and be faced with their enemy having an advantage. Seconds pass. Angela shifts Imiter's tooth in her grip, palms sweating beneath her gauntlets. Tobias begins to conjure a mote of flame, his eyes locked on the entrance, his ears pressed back like a cornered animal. Bethaniel gives Valatha a signal, and the bardess summons a spectral hand, directing it to hover near the door. The elf takes a deep, shuddering breath, and then pulls it open. As the door opens, the quiet is broken almost instantly. Noise, motion, and adrenaline fills the room and the warriors within. The hobgoblins give a war cry, at one charging forward with his shoulders low. Tobias lets fly a firebolt in the same instant as he is struck by two arrows, one in his shoulder and another in his thigh, which knocked the young wizard back into Valatha's waiting arms. The charging goblinoid ducks beneath the arc of flame, leaving it to scorch the archers behind him, and rushes directly toward the wounded bunny, intent on confirming the kill. What he didn't account for, however, was the righteous fury of Angela Hawthorne. The hilt of Imiter's tooth cools her palms as the air dusts up, and she moves forward, planting a foot down and bringing her blade to bear in the same strike she'd practiced 100 times. She feels a gentle breeze guiding her hand as the blade swoops through the air horizontally, and though she braces for the impact, the metal meets with flesh, then bone, then flesh again, returning to the air it came from, carving directly through the target like so many straw dummies she had cut before. The skirmisher collapses to the floor with a wet thud, and a gust of wind fills the chamber, roaring, humming, filled with energy. One glance at Angela in this brief moment told you everything necessary about her. All eyes were wide as the wind washed over her allies and enemies alike, and for a single blinding moment, Angela Hawthorne was a giant.
It's not rabbit season today, bastard.
Elias is still trying to pull arrows out of himself, but when he sees the hobgoblin coming toward him and then not coming toward him anymore, he stops fucking with the arrows long enough to give it a thumbs up and a grin.
The corpse of her foe settles in two parts, and the wind dissipates, Angela standing a mere 5'6" once again. The remaining hobgoblins, though severely intimidated, are well-trained enough warriors to not cow at the first sign of being outmatched, and a trio of them rush in, archers dropping their bows and drawing blades. Now knowing the most present threat in the room, and in fact fearing they may never manage to forget that threat until their dying breaths, 2 hobgoblins hem in Angela, while the third rushes to contend with the more defenseless casters. 2 blades come down in deadly arcs and 2 long swords bounce back as she braces her shield with both arms, utilizing it like a reinforced umbrella against so much driving rain. She hefts the weapon back upwards, shoving those hobgoblins off of their feet as they stagger from her defensive blow. Uttering another blessed curse, Bethaniel attempts to grasp his attacker with a hand that now glows with necrotic energy, but his palm meets nothing but air as the beastman pivots to the side, intent instead on skewering the rabbit who scorched him. Tobias, for his part, has no intention of getting skewered for a third time, and deftly hops away, disengaging back to the corner of the room. Valatha's sing-song voice calls out to the rabbit with intention, bestowing a healing word upon him, and he feels his wound seal in his punctured shoulder, though it still aches from the impact. Still in possession of Bethaniel's crossbow, she attempts to redeem her earlier flub, but yet again it flies wild, as she simply cannot get trajectory to work in her favor. Moving to flank Angela from either side, both hobgoblins strike once again, and though she successfully deflects one with her shield, the second bites into her side just below her ribs, and slices deep into her skin and muscle. Were it not for the scale mail pinching on either side of the blade, it could have cut so much deeper. The warrior contending with the trio of mages snarls as Tobias flees, and stops short, transferring his momentum into an attack that slams into Bethaniel with a crash, slicing harshly into his arm just below where the armor ends. The cleric hisses at the pain, hurriedly calling on his goddess to aid his fight, and the wound glows for a brief moment as the flesh knits together. Angela grits her teeth and shoves her opponent back off of his guard, hastily unfastening a small vial and gulping down the amber liquid as quickly as she is able. The concoction burns with an emboldening heat in her throat as she feels her chest swell with adrenaline yet again. Her mind moving like lightning, Angela remembers well her trainers over the years, almost all agreeing on one thing: you never turn your back to an opponent during a fight. One scarred woman's voice overtakes them all, though, her most veteran teacher, and her tales were rich with one lesson. In a real fight, no rules matter. Surviving, winning, bringing victory to a good cause, that mattered. It is this determination that narrows the young warrior's eyes as she gazes across Imiter's honed edge, and throwing all caution away, Angela's muscles surge with energy, just as the breeze kicks up around her feet. The curved longsword whirls above her head as she lunges forward at her opponent, and as his counter lunge meets her shield, she does the unthinkable, and spins. The hobgoblin behind her already has her flanked, so she trusts her armor to protect her, as she deals to them that which they seek to give to her. The new angle finds the hobgoblin she approached cantering off to the side, and when the woman's blade does come around, it does so with such force and ferocity that the goblinoid's arm continues to move forward as it is separated from the warrior's body. A second cartwheel of a strike comes right back up with record speed, and both wind and steel bite deeply, half separating the hobgoblin's neck from his body. He gives a strangled gurgle as his life ebbs, and he collapses alongside his severed limb. Emboldened by this turn of the tides, Angela seizes the opportunity presented, and with a rallying cry, the wind does not subside. Angela's feet dig into the stone hard enough to leave gouges as her warrior heart surges, and the wind thrums, rebounding off of the walls and magnifying the intensity of her charge. As her voice rises, so too does the wind roar, and as the hobgoblin moves to parry, the young warrior does not angle her blade. With a blur, the flashing metal meets, and like wheat, the hobgoblin's blade parts before Imiter's tooth, leaving the raider a scant moment to realize his peril before his face flares with the pain of the incoming cut. The first blow isn't deep, but Angela's furious motions do not subside. An instinctive guard is battered away, and the hilt falls from a damaged hand. An interposed gauntlet cracks as the creature is pushed back, and before the hobgoblin can even consider another course of action, the light begins to fade in his eyes. He feels his body falling slack, but hanging on Angela's blade, whose tip is buried in the wall on the other side of the beast's heart. A surgical thrust made in the fraction of a second. The true power of a fighter. The last thing the monstrous man sees before his life slips away is the piercing stare of a woman who does not fear him. The last thing Angela sees before his life slips away is a monster who does fear her. Dislodging her blade from stone, he slides from the sword to the floor, aided by both wind and gravity, and Angela turns on the remaining hobgoblin, who gulps. Fighting alone, he knows he does not stand a chance. Before she can strike, or he can flee, however, Tobias spouts a considerable volume of flame, 3 bursts rushing to assail the last warrior. One after another, they pummel his torso, the first searing the mail, the second melting the chains, and the third incinerating the man himself from inside, leaving a charred hole in the center of his chest. As their final foe's body falls, the bloodied Harengon's eyes meet Angela's own, and she gives her companion a grim nod. The acceptance and appreciation for her newest party member is clear. The brutality the bandits visited upon others has been repaid with a fervor one could call almost karmic. And with that dark deed done, a quiet settles into the room once again. Panting breaths are all that break the silence, as even the wind of the enchanted blade rests, and none of those breaths come from the fallen hobgoblins. This horde, at least, has breathed their last.
Tobias kind of looks at the tip of his finger, confused for a moment, and then he looks at the smoldering corpse, and he just grins and chuckles to himself.
A tiny wisp of smoke rolls out of the tip of Tobias's finger.
Just held to go do the finger guns, blow the end of it off type thing.
And Angie will return the thumbs up at him.
It's kind of hiding behind Nathaniel right now and kind of using him as cover, and she kind of peeks out behind him, and she's just kind of like, oh, that's a lot more bloodier than I expected.
This was indeed a bloodbath. Everybody okay?
Man,
Oh,
that
God.
crossbow back.
Oh, yeah. She just kind of fumbles with it, but hands it back to him. Thank you. I know I'm not a very good shot.
Just don't rush up to me like that again.
Thus ends the party's first battle against enemy combatants who are more soldier than monster. It was a bloody deed to be sure, but such was the same mercy that these hobgoblins had given to the peaceful followers of Shantea. This was the best of Aelul's first time doing battle against creatures that were neither insane nor animalistic, and with the intensity that filled the battle, it deserved an extra special treatment, so I hope you enjoyed that. This new schedule has been a godsend for us, and considering how views have been skyrocketing, I would like to thank you all so much, and you, YouTube, for sharing this with all of your friends and helping to grow our community. Definitely don't stop sharing, though. We are absolutely not done growing, not by a long shot. Thank you for watching until the end, and I'll be off now to go work on episode 10. Well, after, of course, I show off once again the list of fantastic supporters who make all of this possible. If you want to join them, you know where to find us. In the power tier, we have David, Denny, Doodle Poodle, Jay Jones, Scorpius187, and William Smith. In the planar tier, we have All Is Fiction, CJ, Darth Cavalier, Joshua Williams, Night Archer, PPNTT807, and Sparkle Lord the Fabulous. In the adventurer tier, we have Breezebender, Alex, Bastion Falconwrath, John R300, Justin, Katie, Mystics, Nevea Nezes, Rosila's Streaming Network, Shadowmancer, and Sneaky GI. In the Quest Giver tier, Drew Tucker, Robert Mischief, Slathar Silcom, and V. In the Townsfolk tier, Biz Adrian, Matus, Okada, Scott Stedman, Sergeant Humpty, Shugenja, Spirit Radio, and Tom Brazeau. As always, this could not have been done without our fantastic players, and of course, the creative team, Doodle Poodle, Nala Fontaine, Shadow Wolf, Scorpius187, MC_Cheshire, Thriving Inferno, and the Forever DM. Me. I am thrilled that you were able to join our party, and I'll see you in the next one. Good night, all.